I gotta say, this deep dive you send over, it's got me thinking. We're talking leadership, right? But not the usual like how to be the boss's stuff. This is different. This is about the WHY. And you threw in Simon Sinek's Start with Why, which I love, but then some news articles too, honestly. I wasn't sure how they'd all fit together.
And that's what makes it so interesting, right? You've got Southwest Airlines, employee happiness, even something about General Motors and
Yes.
Toyota. But there's this thread, this common thread, purpose. That driving why behind what people and companies do.
Okay, yeah, you've got me hooked already. Sinek is always great, but I gotta be honest, sometimes that whole purpose-driven thing feels, I don't know, kind of fluffy.
I get that. But what Sinek does so well is he grounds it in science, connects this why idea to like actual brain wiring.
Neuroscience. Okay, now that's where I might need you to walk me through it a bit. Not exactly my forte, but even before we go there, I'm curious. Is this why stuff only for like huge companies and CEOs? Can the average person, can they use this too?
Absolutely. This is relevant to all of us. Whether you're leading a team, working on a project, even just, figuring out your next career move. And to really get how it works, we got to unpack Sinek's golden circle, the WHY, the HOW, and the what. Most companies, he argues, they get stuck on the what, the products or services.
But the companies and leaders that really inspire us, they flip the script. They start with the WHY. I get that part, but the brain, how does that all fit in?
Okay, so imagine your brain has this inner boardroom, okay? The limbic system. That's our emotional core where decisions happen. That's where the WHY lives. It's all about feelings, values, that deep sense of purpose. But the part that handles language, logic, explaining things, that's the neocortex. That's where the what hangs out.
Hold on. So there's this disconnect between what we deeply care about and our ability to actually explain it.
Exactly. We struggle to put our why into words, but we feel it strongly. It's why we might love a product, but can't quite say WHY.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's like when you try to explain why you love certain song, you're like, I don't know, it just gets me.
Precisely. So bring that to the business world.
And
Think of a company like Apple. They're not just selling gadgets, are they?
yeah.
They've always been about empowering the individual,
Yeah.
challenging the status quo.
Yeah.
Think different, right?
You're right. That's totally them. So that think different idea, that's their WHY.
Exactly. And it resonates deeply. It's not just a slogan. It's in their design, their marketing, everything, the products, the what. They become expressions of that belief, almost like tangible pieces of that think different philosophy.
Yeah.
And this even shows up in those news articles, like Southwest Airlines. Their success isn't just about low fares, it's how they treat their employees. Remember that quote from their CEO?
Oh, yeah. Something like, happy employees lead to happy customers, which makes shareholders happy. A chain reaction, starting with how you treat your people.
And that is WHY driving the hate how. Southwest's focus on their people, H-how, their H-how-A, and it flows from their WHY serving people, both internally and externally. You get this trust, this loyalty that you just can't fake with marketing.
Okay, I see it now. WHY fuels HHW, which then leads to what? But Sinek talks about the split that happens as companies grow. What's that all about?
The split, that's where things get, well, messy. It's when the initial passion, that clear sense of WHY gets diluted. Maybe the founders leave or the company gets so big that the purpose gets lost in the everyday chaos.
And then what? Does the company just become all about making money?
Pretty much, yeah. When the WHY fades, companies turn to what Sinek calls manipulations. Price wars, aggressive promos, maybe even like scare tactics. It's like forcing a connection with customers instead of earning it. One of the articles you sent mentioned Walmart. Made me think about Sam Walton, their founder. He was all about serving people, employees, and customers. But somewhere along the way, it seems like things shifted.
Yeah, I see what you mean. There were those controversies, right, about how they treat employees. Like, they lost sight of that people first thing.
That's the risk with the split. It erodes trust. It can really hurt a company. Contrast that with, say, Costco. They seem to have kept that employee focus, and they're doing incredibly well because of it.
They really are. They pay well, great benefits, low turnover. It's like their employees are talking Costco values.
Exactly. And that's what Sinek calls a good fit. When people truly believe in a company's WHY, they stay, they engage, they contribute more. They're not just there for the paycheck, they're part of something bigger.
This is making me think about that story of General Jumper, the Air Force pilot who almost died in a crash because of overconfidence. It seems like a jump, but it's making me think about the role of trust in all this.
I like that connection. Because Jumper's story It's not about recklessness, it's about trust. He relied on the Air Force's culture of trust, their training, to recover from that mistake. And he went on to have an amazing career. And that's the thing about a strong WHY. It builds trust, lets people and teams not just succeed, but recover when things go wrong. It's like a safety net made of shared purpose.
I'm seeing now how this is so much bigger than just business, you know? It's about people, how we behave, our relationships, how we connect with everything around us. And speaking of connecting, this is where those different sources you sent, it gets really cool. We've got individuals like Dr. King, the Wright brothers, companies like Apple and Southwest, even social movements like that EFE Foundation.
It's all range of impact,
Yeah.
driven by WHY. And it shows how this isn't just about, profits. Take Dr. King, his WHY, that belief in equality for everyone, it just resonated deeply, even with people who maybe at first didn't agree with him.
It's like he became like a symbol of that belief, a walking, talking embodiment of that WHY.
Exactly. And that's what started a movement. He wasn't alone, obviously, in fighting for civil rights, but his WHY, how he communicated it, it got people moving, created a tipping point that changed things forever.
You saying tipping point, it reminds me of how Sinek talks about that law of diffusion of innovations. You said I'd find it relevant, with how I'm into business trends. So break it down for me. How does a movement or even a product go from like a niche thing to everyone having it?
It's pretty amazing, honestly. Sinek, he uses the work of Everett Rogers, who mapped out this whole process. But the main thing is, mass adoption, it doesn't happen by going after the majority right away. It happens when enough people, like 15, 18%, they really believe in the WHY. They become the passionate advocates, the early adopters. They spread the message naturally because they're inspired, not because they've seen a bunch of ads.
So instead of trying to win over everyone all at once, you focus on getting that core group of believers fired up.
Exactly. And this is where so many companies, even with good products, they miss the mark. They focus on what the product does, all the features, instead of WHY it matters,
Oh,
at a deeper level.
this makes me think about TiVo. They were early with that digital recording tech, but they never really took off. Wasn't there that stat comparing the number of TiVo owners to outhouses in America?
Ouch.
Yeah.
That's harsh. But it makes the point. TiVo had the tech, the money, even the market, but they didn't connect with those early adopters. The people who would have become like evangelists for the product because it fit their values, they were so busy explaining what TiVo was that they forgot the WHY, why it mattered.
So how does Dr. King tie into this diffusion law? He wasn't selling a product, but he definitely created a movement.
Think about it. His WHY, that dream of equality, it resonated so strongly with that first group of believers. And they became the driving force, spreading the message, organizing, changing public opinion. It's that ripple effect Sinek talks about, how a powerful WHY can create this groundswell until it reaches that tipping point.
Wow. Yeah, I see it. Like a chain reaction of belief and action. And speaking of belief, this is making me think about something totally different. That Dr. Seuss excerpt you included from the Sneetches. I know it's a kid's book, but there's some real psychology in there.
Oh, totally. It's brilliant. The Sneetches, with their stars on their bellies or not, it's that human need to belong, to be part of something bigger.
And that need, Sinek says, it's tied to WHY. We're drawn to people, to companies that share our values. It's like finding your tribe, a place where you fit in.
It's about that emotional connection, that shared purpose
Yeah.
that's deeper than just like buying and selling. Think of brands like Harley-Davidson. People don't just buy the motorcycle, they buy into a whole lifestyle, a community.
It's like those Harley riders, the ones with the logo tattooed on them, right? They're not just customers, they're part of something bigger, like tribal almost.
Exactly. And that kind of loyalty, you can't manufacture that. It comes from a WHY that really gets people deep down. Remember how we talked about the brain? The limbic system, the emotional part, it doesn't handle language.
Yeah, how we might not be able to say why we like something, but we just feel it.
That's why it matters for companies to communicate their WHY clearly. Because when we don't get the WHY, we make decisions based on, like, logic, data. And that can feel cold, impersonal.
And that's how you get buyer's remorse, right? Or that feeling of about something, even if on paper it's perfect.
Right. But when a company's WHY is clear and it matches our values, you get that powerful connection, one that goes beyond logic.
Okay, so I get that having a WHY is important for companies and D people, but how do you actually figure out what your WHY is? That seems like a pretty deep question.
Sinek has some good tips. He says to look back at your origin story. What was the spark, the problem you were trying to solve, the belief that got you going, the need you wanted to fill?
It's like an origin story, like those superhero movies, you know?
Yeah.
They figure out their powers, what they're meant to do. But here, it's your WHY, your impact on the world. That's awesome.
It really is. Like, think about the Wright brothers. They weren't just obsessed with, like, building a plane. They wanted to change everything, to prove that we, as humans, we could achieve anything.
Mm.
That WHY, it fueled them, kept them going through all those setbacks, and they ended up, changing the world.
I'm having a real aha moment. I'm seeing how this WHY isn't just for companies, it's for me. My life, my work, even my relationships. It's like figuring out what really matters, what drives me.
And that's often the first step to a more fulfilling life.
Yeah.
Making choices that line up with your WHY, your career, your relationships, even how you spend your free time.
But what about when a company gets bigger? We talked about the split, right? When the WHY gets lost. How do you avoid that as you grow?
Sinek, he uses this metaphor of a megaphone. It's not about shouting louder. It's about building things that amplify your WHY in everything you do. Putting that WHY into the culture, how you hire your products, even customer service.
So it's got to be like woven in, not just a slogan, but something everyone like lives and breathes every day.
Yes. And you got to keep reminding people. Leaders have to say, this is WHY, we're here, not just do this task. Keep that purpose alive, even as things change and the company grows.
It makes me think of those companies we talked about. Southwest, Costco, they've kept that WHY-driven culture even as they got huge. It's like they attract the right people from the start.
It's the power of a clear WHY. It's a magnet for those good fits, the people who get it, who are passionate about that mission.
You know, it also seems like those companies, the ones with a strong WHY, they do better in tough times. They're not just about profit, so there's something deeper that helps them like get through the hard stuff.
Think about Southwest after 9/11. Other airlines were, cutting costs, laying people off. But Southwest, they kept their people, paid them, even gave bonuses.
That was a bold move.
Yeah.
But it worked, right? They came out stronger, their values were still there, and that connection with employees, it was even stronger.
Shows you what happens when you stick to your WHY. Even when things are really hard, it's knowing your people are what matters, and that taking care of them helps you achieve your mission.
This whole deep dive, it's been, wow, really eye-opening. I'm seriously inspired to figure out MY, WHY now. Like, for real. It's like a whole new way of looking at things, making decisions.
That's great to hear. And it reminds me of something Sinek says, that WHY, it's not just an idea, it's a choice. We get to choose our WHY.
So it's not about finding it, it's about choosing it and letting it, like, guide you, making those daily choices that fit with that purpose.
Exactly. And that choice, that's what makes life more fulfilling, more impactful for you and for the people around you. So as you go about your day, think about what really stuck with you from this conversation. What can you DO, big or small, that lines up with your WHY? You could even try this golden circle thinking with your next big decision, right? A career change, a purchase, even how you spend your time. That's the cool thing about being a learner, as you are. There's always something new to discover, a new way to connect with the world.